This is a CBC podcast.
And the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games are underway, as you well know. This weekend, not one but two athletes from northern BC will be competing in the same event, the 3,000-meter steeplechase. The first of these athletes to qualify is Regan Yee of Hazelton, who qualified for the Summer Games by setting a new Canadian record in the event, 9 minutes and 27.54 seconds. I spoke to the 26-year-old earlier this month after she'd learned she'd be headed to Tokyo. Here is our conversation. Regan, good morning.
Good morning.
And congratulations. What a whirlwind. You're now officially off to the Olympics. How does it feel?
Yeah, I still am processing it and getting used to that idea.
Tell me a little bit more about the events that led up to that announcement.
Yeah. So our season has been a little bit last minute, I should say. We had some plans to compete in Ontario, but there was some interprovincial travel restrictions, so those got canceled. So we left all our races until the last 3 weeks of the Olympic qualifying window. So it was a little nerve-wracking, but our coach planned everything perfectly. We peaked at the exact right time. And when I say we, I mean me and my training partner, Alicia. We both qualified in the steeplechase. But we ran the Harry Jerome International Track Classic in Vancouver, and then went off to Montreal at the end of June for Nationals and La Classique d'Athlétisme de Montréal. And yeah, the races just each time we got a little bit better. So for that final one, I was feeling good. I had just won the national championship, so I wasn't putting a lot of pressure on myself for placing. I just wanted to get out and have a good race and just run, as my coach said, just run fearlessly. So yeah, I felt good that day and got out and ran the Olympic standard and a national record. So it was pretty exciting. Yeah,
you talk about running fearlessly, but did you have in mind that you might just break the record at the same time?
Yeah, it was in the back of my mind, but when I got on the start line, I just tried to clear my mind and just be at peace with whatever happened. And that is kind of the way that I run best, when I just don't have lots of things swirling around in my head and a lot of pressures on me.
And so when you realized what had happened, what happened in your mind after that?
Yeah, as soon as I crossed the finish line, I had a little mini celebration. I saw the clock as I was crossing, so I knew what I had done. So yeah, actually, first of all, I threw up. After that, then I had a little celebration. Burst into tears at one point. There was just so many emotions when you realize a goal like that.
And family and friends, what did they say?
Oh, they've been so supportive. My parents actually drove all the way down from Hazelton to Vancouver for the Olympic announcement last weekend, so that was pretty awesome. I've had so many messages of support from my hometown in Hazelton and all over the north, and family members down here and friends and training partners. And yeah, it's been overwhelming, but amazing.
And Hazelton must have something special going on, because in becoming an Olympian, you now join two other Hazelton's athletes, Lindsay Belisle and Carol Wynn. Lindsay represented Canada in 2004 in Athens, and Carol was both in the 2008 Beijing Games and 2012. How does this happen that three Olympians come from Hazelton?
It must just be a pretty special place. I don't know. People ask me that a lot, but it might have something to do with how supportive the community is. Everybody feels a part of the process, and they all pitch in, which has been awesome. But yeah, I'm very lucky to have had two role models like that growing up, to see that anything is possible. You can get to the Olympics, the pinnacle of our sport, if you just put in the work.
But this, we should say, has been an incredibly unusual year because of the pandemic. I mean, the Tokyo Olympics are happening 1 year late. What has it been like trying to train and get yourself ready for competition under all of the restrictions that you faced?
Right, yeah. So especially last year, we just kind of had to take it day by day. It was impossible to plan ahead. So we just kind of did our own thing. We weren't worried about competitions. We did some time trials and stuff, but just tried to stay healthy and get our runs in. And then coming into this year, it was a lot more complicated we chose not to travel to the States for competition, just for safety reasons, sort of. Like, I didn't feel comfortable without having 2 vaccination shots. So we stayed in Canada. But as I said, some races got canceled. There was restrictions that continued on. So yeah, that was the hardest part, was trying to stay sharp for competition. And yeah, you need to really have that mindset going into a race that is something you need to practice, and that practice comes with races. So if you don't have races, then it makes it pretty difficult. And
once you're actually in the race situation, I mean, a lot of us don't know the demands of the 3,000 meter steeplechase. What will that be like? Do you have a sense?
Like of the Olympic competition?
Mm-hmm. What do you think that will feel like?
Well, if it's anything like the World Championships, it's going to be pretty overwhelming. Luckily, now that I have one experience of it, like high-level international competition under my belt, I think I might be able to relax a little more in the race and actually be able to execute my race plan instead of just trying to survive in the race. But yeah, it's pretty intimidating getting out there with like the world's best. But I earned my spot there, so I feel like this year I'm going to have a little more confidence. And my goal is to make the Olympic final. I hope that you'll hear all of the cheers coming from Hazelton's and right across northern BC when you're making that race. Regan, best of luck. We'll be watching. Oh, thank you so much, Carolina. Hazelton's Regan Yee. I spoke to her earlier in the month. She is in Tokyo right now and will be competing in the 3,000 meter steeplechase event. That takes place Saturday at 5:40 p.m. Pacific time. And running alongside Regan is another Olympian who got her start in northern BC. The time now is 7:45. And Alicia Butterworth was born and started her life in track and field right here in Prince Rupert. She was pretty excited to find out she'd qualified for the Olympics alongside her teammate Regan Yee. And I spoke to her shortly after the announcement was made. Alicia, good morning. Good morning. Tell me about the moment when you knew that you were qualifying for the Olympics. It was kind of a weird one. The way that qualifying works for Canadian track and field is a little bit different than for other sports. So after my last race, which was just a few hours before the qualifying window closed, we knew that I had enough points to hopefully be in the rankings, or we were pretty confident I had enough points to be securely in the rankings on the World Athletics list, but we had to wait until the next day for them to release the list to be sure. And then after that, based on the criteria written by Athletics Canada, we were fairly certain I would be named to the team, but then we still had to wait a few days to actually see my name on the list and to start celebrating. So it was this kind of weird, a little bit of a murky process, but we were fairly certain for a few days and then just waiting on confirmation. So how did you celebrate? I was able to go see my family for the first time since last summer. They live in a different zone, so I was not able to travel to see them at all this year. So fortunately, I was with them when I found out, so I was just able to celebrate with them. Oh, how marvelous. What was their reaction? They were both very excited and very disappointed. My mom has been saving up all of her air miles, and they're really disappointed that they cannot come watch me in person, but really excited that I get to go. How long have the Olympics been a goal for you? I think I've always wanted to represent Canada on the world stage in running, I think since high school. And in 2016, I really had kind of a breakout season and put myself in a position to make the Olympic team that year. I didn't, but it was kind of enough that I realized that year that this was no longer just a far-off goal, but something that was actually attainable. So it became much more real for me in 2016, and since then I've been working really hard to make Canadian teams and make that goal a reality.
And I wonder, by having the games delayed by a year, do you think that that helped at all for you being able to get to this world level stage?
For me personally, it did. I had some injuries in late 2019 and some injuries in the spring of 2020 that I think would have made it a lot harder for me to qualify in 2020. And in 2021, I was able to have my longest block of training without injury. We really got our training dialed in, and I started to see a lot more results, or a lot better results in training and then, of course, in races. So for me personally, I think it was a huge help and possibly the reason why I get to represent Canada.
And so in the coming, I mean, as you prepare to be a part of the Olympics, how do you make sure that you're still doing rigorous training but not hurting yourself? What's the balance?
It's just the same as we always do. So it's really easy because there's really no difference. We don't change anything. We just keep going the course, keep doing training that we're used to doing. And you don't really, everything we've been doing obviously has worked up to this point because it's gotten us here. And so you just don't make any major modifications at this point.
You're going to be competing alongside Regan Yee, originally from Hazelton, who we have also spoken to about this Olympic dream. What's that going to be like for you and Regan?
I think it's going to be fantastic. Being training partners, both originally being from up north, it's fun to be able to represent small towns. And I think it's going to be fantastic to be able to chase these dreams and goals together and have someone who keeps you grounded and who you train with day in and day out, so you know them really well. It just adds almost a sense of family to the games, especially considering we can't have any family there. I think it's going to be very beneficial.
And what are you hearing from friends and family who are still in Prince Rupert?
So I don't have any family in Prince Rupert. We moved when I was 13. But I have been, hearing from my past friends, and everyone is just really congratulatory, and there's been a lot of support.
And you mentioned the fact that your family isn't going to be able to be at the Olympics this year, of course, because of COVID restrictions. What are you thinking about as you enter into what might be the most unusual Olympic Games in the history of the Games?
Yeah, I definitely think it will be. And I'm always just thrilled to be able to represent Canada. And so I'm just going to bring that enthusiasm with me. And I'm still so excited to be able to go and represent Canada, even though we essentially will not be able to see any of Japan. We won't be able to have any fans in the stands. It'll be, a very quiet experience and a very kind of locked down experience, but at the same time, I'm still just beyond excited to be able to represent Canada, so I'm going to make the most of it and do what I can.
And before I let you go here, can you take us through what this race is going to be like? I mean, it's the 3,000 meter steeplechase. So what are some of the challenges that you'll be confronting?
It kind of depends. So the first round is, we're divided into 3 heats, and a few people per heat, 3 people per heat will make it through based on placing, and then the other individuals who make it into the final will be based on time. And so it's hard because you don't know what your heat is going to do and whether people are going to try to make it a sit and kick race, which essentially means slow times, and then just trying to get those top 3 auto qualifying spots, or if someone's going to take it out and try to make it honest so that more people can qualify based on next fastest times. I'm just going to go out there and try not to think too much and just
race and focus on racing and putting myself in a position to come in that top 3 spot. And if not in those top 3 spots within my heat, then just come shortly after to hope to get in on time. But I'm not really going to focus on time during the race. I'm just going to focus on just the pure competitive racing aspect to it and not thinking too much. It's going to be hot and humid in Tokyo. And so I just want to be able to think as little as possible, to be able to, I guess, worry as little as possible while I'm racing. I don't want to think about the heat or anything that's going on, and just really just dial in and focus on the girls in the race.
And somewhere in the background, maybe you'll be able to hear Northern BC cheering for you and Regan Yee.
Yes, exactly.
Really great to speak with you this morning. Best of luck.
Great. Thank you.
Alicia Butterworth, she and Regan Yee of Hazelton racing alongside each other in the 3,000-meter steeplechase event. The preliminary round happens Saturday night, July 31st at 5:40 p.m. Pacific time. The finals on August the 4th at 4 a.m. Pacific, so you'll have to get up early to see that. You can watch it live. You can also catch the highlights by using the CBC Olympics app or CBC Gem. And by the way, if you want to see a phenomenal picture of Alicia Butterworth and Regan Yee racing alongside each other, we've got a story up about them on our Facebook and Twitter pages. You can find that at Daybreak North. Regan Yee tweeted it out with the hashtag #YeeButterBelieveIt.
For more CBC podcasts, go to cbc.ca/podcasts.